The 18th.
Okay, got it. All right. We're going to go ahead and start the Community Health and Safety Task Force meeting for April 4th, 2023. And let's start with a roll call, please.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Roll call for the task force. Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Present.
Bruce Finger,
Here.
Annie Ruskin,
Present.
Emily Cottonbach,
Present.
Monica Alt,
Here.
Gino Zamora,
Here.
and Mary Louise Romero.
Here.
And welcoming our community members who are joining us, and also Sarah Grant and our city staff lead, Julie Sanchez. Thank you, everybody. Back to you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. And we'll see if Chris will be able to join us. And Marcela. Oh, there she
There's
is.
Marcela.
Okay. So Marcela's here, and then Chris may join us later. So I'm going to go ahead and skip on. We're not approving the minutes for March, our last meeting on March 7th, because they weren't attached to Prime Web. So we'll approve those at the next meeting. Communications from co-chairs. I don't have anything specific. I think just maybe all of us that were there at the last governing body meeting when we presented last week. I can't believe it was last week. It felt like forever, but it was last week, right? I'm totally not getting my times right. I couldn't even remember when Easter was. I was like, we're in April already. So that's where I'm at these days. We did have a presentation, so that would probably be maybe an update for those of you that weren't on. I don't know if anyone watched it other than Bruce. Was anyone in the waiting room? Valeria, claro, and nobody else, huh? I don't think. So I guess I'll start with that, and you can weigh in, Valeria and Julie, about that. We gave a presentation. It was a PowerPoint, and it was just kind of high level, some of the things that have happened the last quarter. And then we always attach our document, which is the quarterly document. And that gives more details as to like what we heard in our listening sessions. And then some of the findings we actually summarized about like the preliminary results from the survey. And so Dr. Sanchez gave us some high level stuff. I think Dr. Sanchez, who gave us those? I'm not sure, but it was helpful just to have a summary. And so those were available. And Dr. Sanchez was ready to go, or he was in the waiting room to answer any questions. And there were no questions at all. It was actually surprising. Well, we had a big agenda, but a lot of people I think on their mind was our audit. And one of the presentations we had that night was also the audit. So that may have been the case, but we were ready to go. And I don't know, is there anything else you all want to add to that?
No, Renee, Julie, thank you again for stepping in and presenting so succinctly and perfectly. Yeah, I was surprised that there were no questions, and I think what we provided in the slide deck was just enough to kind of have like a quick frame of reference of updates, and like you said, Renee, having the more fully detailed report, it's always part of that deliverable. So
yeah. Any reflections, Bruce? No. Okay.
Only the awards that were given out.
The awards. Oh, is that all you took from that presentation?
No, but
I'm
I
just
thought that was good. I didn't know the St. Michael's.
Mhm.
What is it?
It was
it
the
soccer?
St. Michael's High School volleyball team won the state
The
championship.
volleyball.
So we honored them before. Maybe that was strategic. Do a nice feel good event. And then we had our presentation right after, and then there was the audit right after that. So we were sandwiched right in the best place, I guess.
Go Lady Horseman.
Exactly. So I think
Chris
that's
is here.
that's about it. Yes. Acknowledge Councilor Rivera is here with us. Chris, we just were talking about the presentation and that there weren't any questions. So is there anything else you want to add about that or any other communications?
I think that was it. You just let them know Gino wasn't going to be with us.
Gina's with us briefly.
Oh, for a little while. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to communicate to the crew?
I don't think so. I think, the calm before the storm, I think we'll probably have a lot of questions at our final meeting, our final presentation. So
Yes.
just be prepared for that.
Right. So the other thing is to communicate, those of you that weren't on when we were talking before the meeting started, is Dr. Sanchez was going to be joining us to give a presentation on the community engagement survey. And he's very sick. So he will be joining us. We're looking at the next meeting. So I think we should talk about that and see if April 18th is a good time to have kind of a next iteration of the community engagement that's happening, not just the survey, but other activities happening. So let us know if that isn't a good date to do that. Otherwise, that we'll let them know that to plan on the rescheduling for that day. And we will talk about the next, I'm gonna probably let Valeria talk about kind of what's next, what we're needing from each other. But before
Absolutely.
let me see if Monica has
Absolutely. Yes, I see Monica and I see your comment, Monica. Go ahead. Thank you, Renee.
Just a couple things, and I realize I've been out of the loop for some time now, working the legislative session. I'm just curious when the final presentation is, and then also the 18th, I will actually be out of town for work, so won't be able to be there for that presentation. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen, but I'm just curious so that I can make sure that as far as our working group is concerned, that we're getting in all of the recommendations into the report, and we're just working backwards.
Mhm. Great. Thank you, Monica. And if it's okay, could I do a quick share screen of that timeline, what I have so far, and then you can all weigh in? Awesome. Oh, Julie, do you mind giving me access? Please. Okay, thank you. All righty. So this is what I'm sure you've been receiving my gentle email reminders about this, our work plan for 2023, and where we're capturing recommendations, starting to kind of identify it. So I've kind of divided it into three sections: the general task force, or policies and practices, also alternative approaches and community engagement. And as you can see, as each of your groups have said or identified certain things, whether it's through the working sessions or learning sessions, I've started sort of capturing. It's in italics because it's just my way of being of support to you to, sort of capture some of the things that you've identified as the work has evolved. But essentially, this is where we need to start to formulate those potential recommendations so that we can utilize our time together as a task force, but also as working groups, to review, revise, refine, and finalize these recommendations that ultimately will go into that final report. My understanding, working backwards from, let's say, the governing body meeting in June, where the task force ultimately will be making its final presentation on recommendations and everything. we would need to have a final draft of that by May 23rd, if not sooner. Again, we'll confirm with Julie and Renee and Chris as to when that presentation will take place. But my guesstimation is that internal due date for us would be at the very latest, May 23rd. So I'm going to pause there and turn to Chris, to Renee, Chris, and Julie to please inform around this timeline, because this is my, again, guesstimation.
So ultimately, the presentation would be in June, because that's the next quarter, and that's actually when we finish our work. Like June is really the time frame that our work would be complete. So I agree with Valeria's plan to get all the like a final draft in May. That date she said, May 23rd, so that we can and sooner probably, just because there's going to be a lot more refinement and then adding in different pieces, including the community engagement. So that's what we should probably shoot for, is mid-May to start compiling that. And let's see, what is the other piece? I guess the other question I just had for your outline, when you say priority and then there's outcome or the recommendation, when you say due date, are you saying, because there may not be a due date for the recommendation for a particular staff, but we could put in the lead, like which departments need to be involved with this? Is that what you were envisioning?
Yeah, because we're going to tie a recommendation to an internal lead within the city, because a task force won't necessarily be leading the recommendation. And I put due date not as a hard day, but to say FY 2024, FY, if it's something that's like a feasible thing within fiscal year 23, great. If not, then we can identify sort of which fiscal year would make most sense for that particular priority.
And I have a question for the folks that were on the drug policy task force. There was probably a template you all used that I think was helpful. It was, I want to remember, it was like a matrix. And I don't have that at my fingertips because I'm at my other office, but I'm wondering if that's a format that would be helpful to use, because it kind of outlines similar things, and maybe Emily or Marcela can talk about that. What were the things that were included in that? Because I think what was helpful is like, there was like short term and then kind of middle range and then long term. And I think, I don't know, maybe you all would want to say more about that, and if that was a helpful template.
I can jump in. Yeah, I thought it was really helpful because it was, I almost could share my screen maybe if we want to look at it, I don't know, but it, we had long, yeah, let me pull that up. It was in sort of short-term, long-term, and or intermediate and long-term goals, but we also separated it by topic area, which is very much by our different subgroups. So we could do that same way. The other thing, though, that was really important was that it was very much grounded in what we heard from community. And so I just want to raise that, in that I'm a little worried putting potential recommendations in there when we haven't gotten the final results to like, so I'm just curious. So I'm just flagging that as a question about what we're going to do in this midterm report. But do you want me to pull up what it looks like?
And then I also put the report in the chat too, if anybody wanted to download it and follow along.
And I just add, Emily, that there were 2 phases in that work. And one was each working group, we put together our recommendations with time, with time frames. And we also, and we were very deliberate about this. Each recommendation had to be, some of us did it more than others, had to be justified by something in the focus group, something in the community engagement piece. In other words, we are not the experts who are just coming up with our best ideas because we're smart people, recommendations. They were we actually had the rationale, exactly. So we had the rationale behind it. And then, once we had all of that, there was a second process or a second phase where we all together determined using, I don't know if it was using a matrix, but basically determining what we as a whole group thought made sense, what we should push, what we should leave out, what we should prioritize, etc. So that was kind of the two-step process. And I would also say, to echo Emily, I know that there are going to be more focus groups. We're planning one here. We actually have about 15 people this week that were in Spanish doing the surveys. But we're also going to do a focus group, and I know Mary Louise is going to do a focus group, and there are going to be some other focus groups. I just think that we should not put, I know we're getting time crunched here, but I think we have to really focus on that and then think through the recommendations immediately after. But that's still happening, and it's probably going to happen over the next month and a half.
The other thing I'll just mention, okay, so we had immediate, short-term, and long-term, and it definitely was a matrix, as you mentioned, Marcella. The other piece that I think was really important is this city role, and whether some of this work is in process or new, especially for council members to sort of, and staff to say, oh, well, we're actually starting to work on that. We wanted to lift up work that is already happening. So I could imagine like the ARU being one of those, right? If we're recommending expansion, that's not a new model, but it's something that's in process. I'm just using that as an example, not that that's necessarily going to come out in the recommendations or not. The other piece was that, was this something that needed funding? That city role, you can see it was sort of funding, whether this was needed leadership, was it actual ordinance change? So was there like legislation that needed to happen? Was this a collaboration with other, like with the county, for example, or other community groups? And I think the fifth category was just advocating. So is this something that we're advocating to happen at a state level? Like there needed to be a state policy change occur so that then the city would support any statewide legislation. So I just wanted to clarify what this city role piece was.
This is very helpful, Emily. Thank you.
I think those are great suggestions.
Annie, hold
But
on.
Sure.
I thought I saw Mary Louise have her hand up while this was going on. I just want to make sure that we didn't miss you for that.
I just wanted to respond to Marcella, it just slipped my mind, for Dr. whoever has not contacted me, and I have a group of students, but if you talk to him, please, I know that the last time that we spoke, you said that you would have him contact me, but I haven't heard from him, and I really don't have contact information for him. So I just want to make sure that I'm accountable for that piece.
Yeah, no, I'll make sure he contacts you. We're talking to him this week about another thing that we're doing, so I'll put that in his ear. And anybody else, just email and let us know or let him know or me, and I'll make sure that he gets the information.
Thank you. Sorry, Annie, do you want to jump in?
Of course. Well, there was a few things I wanted to, I think a lot of great suggestions, and I take Marcella's point that a lot of our recommendations should be based on what the community feedback piece is, but I don't think it should be limited to that, because through the course of all our presentations, we have insights to a lot of the issues the community is not aware of, like PTSD in the fire department, or the need for lactation policy for the fire department. So I think it shouldn't be restricted to that. And I think, Val, when you talk about the lead person, I assume you mean who's responsible. So it might be like HR and the police chief.
Right.
Right.
I think there's definitely, that's a good point, Annie. There's stuff that we've been working on, policies and practices that we could probably, we've already, there's in some cases, the city's been already moving forward with some of the things that we were looking at. And then there's other stuff that it's like getting gender data or any kind of demographic data has been impossible. So I think that's one of our recommendations. Like, we need to be compiling that information to see what trends are for police and fire departments.
Right.
Don't have any of that data.
And
At
just to,
Yeah.
oh.
So anyway,
And
stuff
just-
like that, I think we can
Mhm.
put recommendations up and give
and
them.
to, and to both of your points, Renee and Annie, that's what you, when you open that Google Doc, that's what you'll see is that as you've all been making progress, you know, progressing the work forward, I've been capturing some of those recommendations that you yourselves have earmarked as, yes, this is the next step. And then you get to go in there and refine it however you deem appropriate.
Any questions about that or the need for that kind of formatting? And it probably should be a Word doc. I don't know if this one was a Word doc that you all used, Emily, initially.
You know, I don't even remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we definitely had it in a Word doc, but we had it formatted, you know, and laid out. But we had, and Marcella, I'm trying to remember, each of our subgroups had a very specific format to work from, where we actually, as Marcella mentioned, we had to make sure we identified where the recommendation was coming from and whether it was grounded in our guiding principles and/or and mostly from our community input. I can try to resurrect that if it would be helpful.
I think it would be, although Canva serves a purpose, but Letty, I think sometimes it's hard for formatting and editing, and it gets a little unwieldy, but I don't know, I defer to the group just to figure out like what's the best format so that we all can access it easily
Yeah.
and make edits.
So if I can give a little context around Canva. So typically what I've been doing is capturing our quarterly reports through a Google Doc, just the copy. So have a central place to capture everyone's work. Then I take that, once you've all approved that that's the final copy, I take it and I create the, you know, the final, the deliverable, the thing that looks nicely formatted and everything. These last two quarterly reports, I did lean into you, Renee, and Julie for some final revisions via Canva, only because of how delayed we were with, you know, with our internal, like it was like a last minute revision. That's the only reason why I ended up sharing that Canva thing. But with this final report, we will do the same thing, utilize the Google Doc or a Word doc, finalize the content, and then I'll take that and create the lovely formatted final document. So just wanted to share that. And back to you, Renee, and I think Marcella has a hand up.
Go ahead, Marcela.
I'm just going to reiterate, when we set out to do this, and the reason why we wanted to have this extensive community engagement, which was cut short for lots of different reasons, or it was sort of truncated, is because we are responding to a moment in our history of just police relations in general and a need to reimagine public safety. And so I really encourage, this is what we're doing, that as great as our recommendations are, that we connect them. And we're creative and we're smart, so I don't see it's going to be a big problem, to what we're hearing from community, what we're hearing from our respective organizations, what we're hearing from the surveys, what we're hearing from the focus groups. And so I just feel like we set that as our guiding principles at the beginning of this process. And so I just hope that we can figure out how to honor that in our recommendations processes. I don't think it's that hard. I think we just have to really link what we've been learning to needs that we are hearing from our respective membership-based organizations, our clients, and the focus groups in the community engagement process. And so, again, it would be good to make sure that as we are making these recommendations, we are connecting it like we did with the MDS task force. To the rationale isn't just that we think it's a good idea, but that it really is rooted in some of the needs that have been expressed from the community. It's really what makes this task force different than any other task force that puts together a report with really good recommendations.
Yeah, Marcel, I think we all agree. I think that's absolutely the piece, the connection, and not just putting out an idea because we've studied it and we had presentations on it. There's probably going to be some connections though, like things that were said in the community and then things that we've been looking at, even if they were like parallel with our presentation. So I think that will just be the work to make sure they're aligned. And then there'll be some internal stuff that we see, like, you know, that we've observed and that would be, you know, things that we need to change just based on, you know, some of the information that we've gotten through the year. Monica, did you have a question, comment? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm so used to just being with people in person now that I don't even know how to work Zoom. I agree with Marcela and Emily that, you know, that was sort of the guiding principle for doing this in the first place. So that if we don't first look at those before we get into it, and of course, honoring what Annie said about fire, that makes sense to me also, but how we can connect those things is so important, because that's sort of to me, the entire purpose of the task force was that. My question is, and again, if everyone can forgive me for being absent, and maybe this has been covered, but just really having an extremely concrete timeline now, since we're getting in the home stretch of getting everything together. And if we are going to first honor what happens with the community engagement, how that changes our timeline and what we're going to need to produce in order to meet the final presentation, etc. And I'm also curious, can the final presentation actually be in July? We have all of the work done and we give it to them, but the final presentation, I mean, that's just really when we present it to the, you know, to me, it seems fine that that's actually a little bit farther out and really, you know, we're finishing up our work, but having a super concrete timeline so we can get that done.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, Monica, but I don't want us to say, let's keep, like, I think if we have deadlines and we keep pushing them, then it just gets later. And then that's like summertime. It's not like we want to be presenting during the summer. I don't know if you all are taking vacation. I'm not, but hopefully you all will be. But yeah, I mean, I think the actual presentation can be later. Yeah, if we need more time for July, and we definitely want to finish everything that we planned on doing. So, and actually, like even the quarterly, like turning in the info of the recommendations, maybe we do provide that information first, and then we do a follow-up, like, so there's, so they can digest it, versus like getting it on that Friday before we have a meeting and at a governing body on a Wednesday. So does that make sense? That doesn't maybe help people digest the information, but anything else? Chris, did you want to say anything about that?
No, I was just going to say that I think what Monica said is that, you know, we can finish our work by the end of June and then do a presentation sometime in July once it's all compiled and put together. So, you know, to me, I think that's fine. We just need to schedule a time that we can do that and do it in a way that, you know, whoever can be there can be there.
Yep. Marcela.
There was something else that we said we wanted to do, and in fact, Dr. Sanchez was really keen on this as well, and that was to sort of represent, and maybe we do this after July, or, I mean, I know that we don't want this to go on forever and ever and ever. We all have other commitments in our lives as well, and professionally and personally, but we wanted to have an opportunity to represent our recommendations in a dynamic way with community. And I just don't know the timing of that. Like, so do we present before the city council and then do that, or anyway, we just I haven't thought that through with anybody, and so I don't know if anybody else has thought it through, and I just didn't get the memo.
Say more about that then, Marcelo. You're saying
That we were planning, I think, to do our set of recommendations based on the community engagement and the policy ideas that come from and that are rooted in the community engagement, or are justified by the community engagement. And then we were going to put together a report that we would present to the public in some way, maybe a couple of community forums, to get reaction to polish and finalize before we say to the world, these are our final, or to the city council. I just don't know if we want to present to the city council first, or because then they get to comment, and both positively and negatively, on the recommendations before we get that dynamic response from community. So maybe we do it before or after. I don't know. Whatever anybody thinks.
Yeah, I don't know if we have enough time to do that without extending the resolution again to expanding our work, an additional 3 months, 6 months. I don't know what that is, but I'm not sure that there will be an appetite from the governing body to do that. I think we had hoped that Gabe would be done, or Dr. Sanchez would be done with his work by the end of this month. I'm not sure we're on task to do that. I was hoping to, again, hear from him tonight, but yeah, I think that's cutting it pretty close. And I don't know if we'll be able to do that piece of it. I don't know what Renee thinks.
there was a comment, let's see, that we could do it late June. The community presentation, you mean?
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there, that if we gave, if we really focus on getting Gabe to do all the focus groups in April. And I know we already have 2 scheduled. I don't think it would be hard to schedule more in April. Then that gives us May to kind of work things out, figure out how to do it. I don't know, if we're saying we're going to present final in July, that might give us a little bit of room to do some kind of dynamic process with the community, but
I like that idea.
away. Yeah. I mean, if
Right.
we're open to presenting final, not just the city council presentation, I'm thinking of like the actual document, right? In mid-July, then I feel like we have some cushion.
That's if everyone's here.
I know, I'm leaving for
Yep.
3 weeks in May.
Right.
So my vacation's in May.
So I think like it sounds good, but then when it like getting it all put together, and does that mean city helps to organize that? That would probably, I don't know. Or do we direct that? And who helps us to organize that is, I guess, the question. I think it makes sense though.
Renee, do you think the governing body would be kind of open to kind of hearing Gabe's findings through a public process before they heard it?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that more.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be Gabe's findings, counselor. It would be our recommendations based on Gabe's findings. And that, so that it's kind of like a quality control thing, right? Like, are we totally off here? Or does this sound right? And then really give people an opportunity. And I bet, it's not that I bet, Gabe said he would be willing to Dr. Sanchez said he would be willing to actually help do that with us, help moderate it, facilitate it, as long as we were to bring people together, because he really believes in that representing to community as well for that final feedback. So it wouldn't be on his findings. It would be on our findings and recommendations.
I think it would be both, but they would be going to the public before coming to the council, and that may put council in a weird position, I think. And not that that's bad, but we have to be prepared for that.
We can strategize more about that and think it through. I'm not sure. I don't know if I agree with Chris, but I'm maybe to hear more about that. Because really, this is just like, hey, this is what you all told us. This is what we heard from you all, and get reactions. And then if there's things that, I don't know, like at what point would we then say there was more input given that at that presentation? Do we add that into the recommendations that then would go to the governing body? I'm not sure. So, I mean, that's possible. A lot of possibilities. So I think that we could talk about that more, think about it.
Well, let's say Gabe in the survey or the surveyor said that safety centers would be a good idea. And then we presented to the public, and the public's is like overwhelmingly, no, we don't want those here in Santa Fe. That then puts everybody in a weird situation, I think. Versus us just saying, you know, we reviewed the information and this is what we think we should be doing or what we should be looking into. That's just that there was just some crazy thing going through my mind, but I'm not the whole committee, so I'll you know, we'll do whatever we think is best, but you know, I don't want to put people in a situation where their recommendations that we make are then different from maybe what the public wants before council has an opportunity to hear all the information. Don't know if that makes sense.
I agree, Councilor Rivera, because I think we sought out really specific populations to interview whose voices weren't heard and who are most impacted by police and fire. And we may present to a different community and they may have a very different perspective.
Any other thoughts people want to share?
I'd love to just sort of dig into this a little bit more, because I think there's a lot there on both sides of how, you know, because essentially, right, like the whole point is the community engagement. So hopefully the public agrees with some of the things. And I think that's why we're engaging. And that's why, you know, Dr. Sanchez has done this whole thing, right, is so that we actually we are honoring those voices. And of course, the council already has their own policies. I mean, the way that we pass an ordinance, right? There's always public comment. So there's always like multiple opportunities for the public to weigh in on things, you know. But I also think, you know, there's lots of different creative ways we could engage with the public and represent the findings. I started thinking about like Mary Louise and the amazing access she has to schools. And there could even be, you know, like many, but of course I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. But, you know, presenting this in some sort of school setting or even at the community college and starting to try and even get young people more engaged in this process. Like there could be other ways we could do it, but it seems like I really would love to talk about it more and see if it is something we could do.
Any other thoughts? Questions?
In our alternative, whatever group, our / community engagement group, when we meet, because I know we're gonna meet soon, can we just kind of come up with a brainstorm and then re-present it to the group as ways of doing that? Just different ideas on how we can do that in a dynamic way. I just think again, I think it's like a quality control. It's respectful of the community, but it also helps us. I know that sometimes I just need reality checks from community, even in my work, right? And I do this, I'm like completely immersed in it. And sometimes I'm like, oh, well, based on all of these things, I think we should do this. And just very easily, they're like that. They're very simple to say, no, we don't think that's actually going to work. And I've said, okay. So, I mean, just something that maybe feels informal, that doesn't, but I do think we should be open to rethinking something if it really just doesn't sit well with people from community, or at least it gives us another way to think about it or talk about it. But I think we can come up with some creative ideas and then maybe throw them out 2 weeks from now and see where people are at. And Councilor Rivera, you're on that. And so you're on our committee. And so you can share deeply what your concerns are with the council. And I think we can figure either a way around it or not. Because I mean, I'm open to hearing what some of those concerns are. And if you think it's going to somehow derail our process, because if that's the case, we don't want to do it.
And I do think we have a responsibility to report to the community our findings, not just to the councilors, not just to the governing body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also, the purpose of this group is to represent the community. And so they are our constituents as appointed members to this group. And so, and we did hear early on, you know, we're a small group and we all come to this with different experiences and expertise, but not all of us represent necessarily, you know, not all of it represent the most impacted, like myself. I know I don't represent most impacted folks when it comes to these issues. And so I would feel more comfortable knowing that we have, you know, consulted with community before signing on to various recommendations.
I guess my only worry is that and I think Annie mentioned this earlier, is that the community in general is not going to be open to the ideas of the at-risk community, which is what we have focused on. And that if we're going to let the general public kind of dictate where we move with recommendations from the youth, from the at-risk community that deals specifically with public safety, then I think we're doing a disservice to what we're doing here. I think, you know, we're not focusing on those people that are directly affected. We're letting the community in general say, you know, we don't like these recommendations, and I worry about that.
I hear you, Chris. Maybe we shouldn't say general public, because the general public is also people that are at risk. This is like a whole gamut. But as we know, there's one side that may see something different from the general public. So maybe not say general public. There'll be differences of opinion from other community members, possibly. And maybe some would agree, especially those that are, you know, most impacted. So yeah, I think I hear what you're saying though, Chris, and then I think we could strategize on that a little bit more. I think Monica had your hand up first, and then Mary Louise.
I just wanted to just say that I totally respect that concern, and at the same time, you know, as a former public defender, the amount of people that I represented that were part of the quote unquote, what maybe some people would see as the general public, it really is all of us. We all break the law. All of us do. My little grandma breaks the law. I do. Everybody on this little panel does. It's just about to what degree and to whether or not you get caught. law enforcement breaks the law, fire breaks the law, the mayor does, everybody does, right? And that it's part of this work is trying to get everybody to be honest with themselves and understand and pull from that empathy that we all do these things and that we're one community, right? And Bruce Finger is shaking his head, and I'm not sure if that's a computer or not, but even Bruce has broken the law before. But we all do it, right? And I think it's a wonderful both challenge, a gentle challenge, to get people to come to that place and pull on that empathy. And I know that the counselors are in unique positions where you guys hear from particular very loud voices on a very regular basis. I don't have to listen to all of those things. You guys do. And so I understand where that's coming from too. And even those voices, they break the law too. So, you know, it's just sort of like remembering that and still gently trying to challenge them that we're all one community. We all live here in Santa Fe, and how we can make that better through, you know, engaging with folks and education and doing the hard work, even in the face of challenges. So I just wanted to share that real quick.
Thank you, Monica. Mary Louise?
So, Monica, thank you for saying that, because we're all lawbreakers for sure. So I have a different perspective. I feel as though it puts the city council, it raises the bar for you guys, city council. Like we're presenting this, and what are you gonna do with it? And I feel like that could be hard for the city council to see that the community is actually on board with recognizing that people listened to them. They shared the gift of listening. They respected where they came from, what they had to say. We on this task force listened to people from the fire department, from the police department. We gave ourselves an opportunity to share the gift of listening with them. And now we're presenting to the city council. So I feel as though Renee and Councillor Villarreal and Councillor Rivera, you guys are on the hot seat. Because we want, and you're on this task force with us, but you expect your colleagues to raise the bar as well. And so I think that's what maybe you guys might be afraid of. But I hope that our work wasn't done in vain, right? Like, I hope that people can do for this task force and the community that we're representing what we did for them and for us. And so I see this from a different perspective, and I hope that I'm not offending you, because that's not my intention. But here we are.
Thanks, Mary Louise. I'm certainly not afraid. Like a lot of the things that might be like, oh my, OMG, how would you ever think of doing something like that? And it's based on research, it's based on community input, and you can take it. It's a recommendation. And frankly, like some of the things that might be like, oh my gosh, how did you even think of doing something like that? Maybe later on in the years when we're all gone, or I'll be off the council or whatever, they'll be like, oh, that was an actual recommendation from the task force, and maybe we should have thought about it. I just think it's good to put it down, whether it gains the kind of traction that it needs or deserves or not. It's still a recommendation that was based and grounded by community input and research and data. So it's not like we're just pulling things out of the air. You know, it's like this was very much a process that we also had community. I mean, that was the crux of it, the community-based process. And also you all are constituents too. You're not just a task force, you are community members that have experience and lived experience and expertise. So I don't see it as like you only having constituents to hear because you're in this role, but you're also a constituent of ours and other, and others. So I guess I just see that it's a represented group. And of course, there's more of a larger population that we're looking at too. So I'm not afraid of whatever we decide after everything is put together, what's put forth. And, there'll be things that people are really like, oh, how could you ever? But you know what? Later on, they'll be like, oh yeah, maybe that could have worked. I mean, this whole thing about safe living spaces and how fearful everyone is about putting a space where people can live safely is a way better option than having people live in the arroyos. And there's just obviously we need to find places that make sense, but it's a no-brainer. And you're always going to get somebody being like, how could you ever think that? Let's put those people way out on 599 away from everybody. Well, that's ridiculous. That's inhumane. I mean, you would never want someone to live way out there with no ability to access anything. That's crazy. So I'm just saying that's an example of this bigger picture that I see as yeah, there's some things that will be, cause consternation. That always is the case on the council, in the community. So, but I agree, let's be strategic about the best placement of where we give it to the council, when we want the community to hear what we came up with based on community input. And I'm sure there would be other opinions too. There always is. So I think we'll find that sweet spot and I'm sure we could figure that out. Maybe not tonight, but.
Yeah. And I'm not afraid either, Mary Louise. I'm willing to present whatever comes forth from this committee. I just want there to be a realization that, not all the council represents the same kind of people that I think I represent on the South Side. And you're going to have different opinions and you're going to have different points of view when it comes to voting on things. And, again, I'll put my best foot forward and represent whatever the committee wants. But just so we know, we are, whether we like it or not, two different communities, I think, between North Side and South Side, and between people that are represented by groups of that I think we're trying to reach out to versus groups that other counselors don't have to deal with.
Maybe this can unite us. You know what I mean? My Nana lives on the North Side. My mom lives on the North Side. My uncle lives on the South Side. I live by Santa Fe. You know what I mean? I totally hear you, Counselor. And I think the more that and I know that that's what we're all trying to do, the more we try to unite all of these different folks, because we all want to live here safely together, the better.
Well, here's an example. Bring up speed vans to any of those communities and see how they all feel about it.
Right.
Perspectives.
Nobody likes them.
Well, it all depends which side of town you talk to.
I remember when they put the speed humps in Casa Solana, and I was outraged. I was outraged that they were going to slow me down. So was my mom. But here we are with speed bumps all over Casa Solana, where my grandparents came from Las Vegas, New Mexico, bought a house in Casa Solana. My mom grew up there. I grew up there. We all went to Gonzales. But here we are in a very different looking community now. But we're still there, and I hate the speed bumps, but I still drive slower because of them. I mean, I also think there's certain things that don't have to be that serious. I don't like the speed bumps, but they're here now. I'll get over it.
Follow the law, Monica. Come on.
Never. No, I mean, sometimes, yeah.
I think this is good. I mean, I think it's good to talk about this with, in our group, and we still can figure that out. There's still time to strategize. I think we all agree though that we want a community engagement. Sorry, what would you call it? A public gathering of our findings. I think we all agree that that needs to happen. It just, when that happens, we'll have to figure that out. So any other thoughts before we move on?
I would just say if we wanted to, yeah, we can have this conversation in our smaller group and then come up with ideas and present them and see what you all think. But the other thing is we could also just send out an invite to anyone who was somehow involved in this process, right? I mean, to anyone who presented, anyone who we contacted for focus groups, interviews, etc. So it's they're seeing their ideas being reflected back in the recommendations that were made. Maybe that's one way to contain it more. Anyway, it's just an idea.
That's good. Yep. I like that idea. Also, just before I forget, and you may have already done this, I think it also, as it relates to alternative responses specific to the ARU, if you all haven't reached out to the team of ARU as they're kind of in this growth phase of needing to grow because of the need, and then, you know, there's other things that still need to happen for them to grow. And we've gotten presentations at our various committee meetings for the city. And I'm hoping that maybe you all could reach out to them to just get some more insight as you start making recommendations and as we get community feedback. Because I think we'll get some community feedback as it relates to ARU. But I know we've had presentations, but it may be good for your working group to kind of circle back with them. Anything else? I think we're still, let's see, were we on communications from staff and facilitator still? I think we've morphed into like matters from the task force, so that's okay. Anything from staff and Valeria and Julie that we missed?
No, I'm really appreciating how this conversation unfolded. Thank you, Emily and Julie, for sharing that the report from the drug policy task force. Sorry if I'm butchering, because then I'm gonna take that, and based on the input here tonight and ideations, I'm gonna put something together to, you know, have you all look at, weigh in, revise, refine, so we have a framework that feels really in alignment with how you all want to convey your message and also the recommendations that you'll be making.
Yep. Sounds good.
And I don't have any updates. I just appreciate the conversation and information, and we'll get together and kind of strategize next steps.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for your ideas and insights. Let's see. So we don't have a presentation. Is there anything else from Matters of Task Force? I don't know if working group breakouts make sense. I see that we lost Emily. I don't know if she had to go. Did I miss that? Did I miss her? I don't see her anymore. And then Gino had to leave. But I would like to just see if maybe our working group could pick a date, but we're probably gonna have to do it via email because we don't have Gino now. And I don't know if you all are gonna meet the other working group to talk, or if we should, if we feel complete for our meeting today. Any insight, any thoughts? And oh, Annie has a thumb up. Chris, anything?
I need some time to talk Monica into quitting her normal job so that she can focus just on us. I've been trying that for 8 months already and it just hasn't worked.
I'll give you my boss's number.
I'm committed to continue to try though.
Yeah, it feels good to be back. I must have missed you guys so much. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but we're doing, you know, I just love it here so much, and I believe in us. Like we can make Santa Fe the best, you know.
That's where I think we need to make our recommendations and our ideas heard, regardless of what everybody thinks, and let the council decide. Don't let the public interfere. I've seen the public interfere with many things, even just recently, and it changes people's minds.
I think the hope is that we're bringing some people with us, right? Or really we're going with them,
Yeah.
And there's always going to be those folks that are going to disagree. But again, you guys deal with it on a very different level than we do. Very different level.
Renee does a good job. I don't.
I don't know about that. I think you guys all field it pretty hardcore. I mean, we've seen some of those meetings. Actually, yeah, I don't know how you guys do this. As a very sensitive person, who also likes to fight. I don't know how you guys do this all the time, right? I mean, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, lawyers, right? All we do is fight all day long. But what you guys do is very unique and hard. Being an elected official, it's very difficult. And it's hard because you're constantly, you can never win.
Well, what I've learned is there's always two sides, the extreme of positions that are diametrically opposed from each other. And then there's the silent middle that we don't hear from very often, hardly ever. Sometimes they write us. Sometimes they'll tell us what they think on the street. Sometimes they're our relatives. Sometimes they're our friends, and they're the silent majority. So that's all I'll have to say, is that there's a lot of what we don't necessarily hear from everybody. And so when you have a process like this is community led. We are not making things up. This is coming from the community. So, and you all are community members too. So if you have opinions about things and your expertise and lived experience, that matters too. And Emily, you missed, we thought we lost you. We were about to wrap up.
Oh, sorry, I got disconnected and then I had to crawl under my computer desk. So I'm glad I'm back. So.
Awesome. Annie?
Maybe we should break up into groups. Just decide within those groups if there's much to talk about or not.
Say that again, Chris. Go in our working, like in our breakouts.
Yeah,
and then
just decide in those breakouts if we have a lot of work to do or not within those groups.
Oh, we do. I can say that now, but yeah, if we want to go briefly into our breakout groups, we're missing a member, and we need to just regroup, and this conversation has also kind of like made me think about some other things, but maybe we can just briefly go into our working groups and the breakouts. So maybe to just plan ahead, like our next meeting or whenever you guys are the other working group is gonna come together to talk about.
And Marcella had her hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, going back a little bit to the representing to community and not big general public, Councilor Rivera, but really focused on the still hard to reach communities. But that would also be a good place to kind of just test, and probably in a very positive way, some of the policy ideas that we've come up with based on our own conversations that maybe are not directly emanating from the community engagement process. And so maybe that's that's the extra step that we need to kind of help, not just justify, but to really help us know that these good ideas that we've been coming up with are actually, that make sense to impacted groups. And I have a feeling they will. And so maybe that's just that little extra step that we need to make sure that we're presenting things that are grounded. I say that like with the lactation stuff, like good policy idea. And I bet you people are going to be like, that's a great idea in that report back.
As Valeria said, are we complete?
Just let me know when you're ready and I can get you all situated in your breakout rooms.
We all good? We feel good to move into our breakouts as long as they need to be, and we will regroup on April 8th. Let's
18th.
just make sure that we all know April 18th is our next meeting for Gabe to present findings. Dr. Sanchez. Except for those that are gone. But we do
Hey Val, I'm gonna add you as the host.
Yes,
I'm gonna
thank you.
Oh, did I forget you, Marcela? Oh, wait, you're on mute.
I don't know, it threw me back here for some reason. Let me try again. Join break.
Oops.
Yeah,
Is she
And
in
it-
group 1 or group 2? Sorry.
group 2 with Chris.
Oops, I accidentally put her in group 1.
It's okay. And then I'll join group 1 and then I'll do my jump around to capture what everybody's doing.
I
Oh,
thought
there's
you were in the
Marcela.
wrong group.
I went to the wrong group.
I'm so sorry.
No
That was
worries, I'm gonna try
me.
again, I'm gonna try again.
Okay, there she is. She got it. Okay, I'm gonna make you the host.
Thank you, Julie.
And then, oh my gosh, hold on. How do I do this? I'm having. It's funny, like I kind of have this pie in the sky dream
Mhm.
where I really want, or I wish I didn't create this group at all or anything like that. But I kind of wish there was a race that it was more focused on race and social justice rather than alternatives to policing.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean, Julie.
But-
Well, that can be another priority for the city and maybe under your division and also in collaboration with the future director of equity for the city of Santa Fe.
Yeah, it could be, but I just feel like it would be so awesome
Oh, I'm
For
so
this.
with you.
with this
So
the expertise at the table, and all the social
Mhm.
justice work. But anyways, who am I kidding? Okay, I made you the host.
Thank you, my
So-
friend.
You should be all good.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Val.
Julie. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
everything. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
You too, honey. Bye-bye. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Valeria, how are you?
I'm
Did you find
okay.
did you find a place to live?
Yes, our friends who had their house up for sale. They had an offer and the person pulled the offer, and so we're staying in their guest house. Yeah.
I was gonna tell you, me and my wife are leaving from April 21st through May 5th. You're welcome to stay at our house for free, and you just need to watch our puppy.
Oh, you are so sweet. April what to?
April 21st through May 5th.
Oh, and that's when we go to Denver for my friend's memorial. Remember my friend who passed away?
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, I
Yeah,
love
if things change, let us know. You're more than welcome
I
to.
will. Thank you,
Um,
Chris. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know if we needed to stay on to talk about anything or.
No, for me, and I'll send in a little action item email tomorrow. I think for me, I'm going to study that drug policy task force recommendations report to see the elements of that framework and put a similar framework together for all of you to weigh in so that we have a framework that's reflective of what and how you want to present your recommendation. But it sounded like that report was a good starting point.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think some of those recommendations should be reinforced again by our committee.
Good. Absolutely.
I think Emily and probably Monica and Marcella, I think who are on that committee may want to be specific on which recommendation should be reinforced. But yeah, we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, chime in that reply because that's gonna help me start putting it together.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate you, Valeria.
Likewise, Chris, have a lovely rest of your evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.